Keep calm. Explanation? Because life's complicated enough. Hello. In this presentation, we're going to take a quick look at some of the main linguistic features of the genre explanation. And you can consider it really as an extension of the presentation I did on genre. Okay, so the genre of explaining. Well, what can we say about it? Let's say it's a very fundamental language function for a start. It would be hard to go through the day, wouldn't it, without some recourse to this genre. We can also say that explaining is a language process that children are exposed to from a very young age. What is it? Well, a good question to ask whenever you're exploring a genre is, what is it used for? You know, what purposes or purpose does it play a role in? Well, explanations can cover a very wide area indeed, of course, but let's say that the process of explaining is used to logically sequence. Sequence what? Logically sequence the way that we and our environment physically function. So that's one big use for it. But also, explanations are used to explain and interpret why cultural and intellectual ideas should be taken seriously. And that second function of explanations is, as we'll see, a little trickier to pull off linguistically. Okay, explanations. Explanations are more than instructions. I mean, the parent who says, "No, you can't go on the road," is offering an instruction, or even a command. What she really means is, you will not go on the road, right? But when she follows it up with, "My little one, because there's a lot of cars using the road and they travel very fast and they cannot see little children, and if they hit you, well, they could hurt you very badly," and so on. Now that's an explanation. And notice it uses causality to make its point. Notice it incorporates 5 action verbs using travel, see, hit and hurt. These action verbs are linked causally. Now, if I was doing an explanation, if I was teaching kids to write an explanation, I might start by doing a joint construction. That's where you construct the text in a kind of consultation with the children, so it becomes a joint process. And if I were doing that, I might think about assembling some of the material processes connected to the causal points we might want to make. Perhaps we could start by listing them and then draw upon them as we compose a causal explanation. From a developmental perspective, young children will begin using the process of explaining as a way of presenting personal experience and concrete knowledge before they start getting into the abstract stuff. And of course they'll hear a lot of explanations from the teacher about a wide range of things, from how we conduct ourselves in school and class, for example, and of course academic areas, science, technology, social studies and what have you. Well, all of those involve a great deal of explanations. But producing explanations is challenging, since they are generally dense texts. They literally condense a lot of information into brief explanatory sequences. Students can therefore find writing explanations quite difficult if they do not have a comprehensive understanding of the way to order and sequence the relevant processes, verbs, that comprise the explanation. Personal explanations are not usually as formal in their organisation as scientific or technical explanations. However, they still often describe or classify the phenomena, event or concept. The reader generally needs to know what it is that is being explained. This picture is my new truck. It has red wheels and a man driving. So that's good. I'm being orientated to what will be explained through a description. And the writer then goes on to explain how the truck works. First, it has to go at the top of the slide, and when you push the button, it goes down and around. So this constitutes the second structural feature of an explanation. Description followed by an explanatory sequence. Explanatory sequences are made up of processes arranged in a logical order that tell how, why, and sometimes how and why combined. In this example, wait a minute. Yes, Sophie arranges the processes as follows, and I've highlighted them. Well, I've coloured them actually. So go at the top, you push the button, it goes down and around. So as readers, we have this clear idea from the explanation how the truck thing works. Well, here's another elementary student's explanation. The water cycle. Rain comes from clouds. It helps us to stay alive. Animals and plants need rain. When rain falls, it goes into the ground and rivers. Then it goes into plants and animals drink it. The rivers go into the sea and the sun makes the rain go back to the clouds. I like the rain. Rain is good for you. So this piece has the following stages: introduction, explanatory sequence, and then evaluation, interpretation. So instead of the usual classification description, we're here given some information about one aspect of the process about to be explained. Now the last stage is very typical of young writers' text. It's kind of cute, isn't it? I like the rain. But it's not usually appropriate in a technical explanation, but you know, it's great, isn't it? Here's another example of an elementary student's explanation. Birds find a lot of things to make their nests. They find twigs and leaves and straw. They weave it around the branch of a tree. Then they have their babies and find worms for them. Okay, explanations that deal with things from an everyday point of view are recognizable by the way they move from one thing to another. And how do they do that? Lucia arranges the sequence of processes birds perform in order to build a nest and feed their young using, well, mainly material processes or action verbs. Find the twigs, weave, have the babies, find the worms. The placement of these processes has established the temporal sequence. Find, then weave, then have, then find. And this temporal sequence is reinforced by the temporal connective then. That's very, very typical. Now, so far we've been looking at explaining things or processes, but there's another subset of the explanation genre that is important for children to master too, and we're going to call that interpretive explanations. Interpretive explanations. Well, what's that? Well, this subgenre is mainly used in the creative arts for reviews and personal responses. Interpretive explanations are closely allied with the genre of arguing, in that much of the elaboration of a proposition requires making an explanation. For example, if I were to say, and I wouldn't mind saying this, I believe there is an overemphasis on high-stakes testing, which is destroying the moral integrity of the public school teaching profession. Wow. Now that's a proposition. But to argue that proposition, I would then probably need to explain what I mean by those terms. So explanation comes into the argument genre. So another reason why explanation it's important for kids to kind of get under their belt. And of course there's a lot more to arguments than the explanation part, but we'll get to arguments in another presentation. Okay, so this is a painting by the British artist L.S. Lowry, 1887 to 1976, called The Accident. I love it. I love this guy's work. Lowry lived in Lancashire, which is northern England, which was in his day, and probably still is today, a very industrialised area, as you can see. He worked in a factory himself, and a lot of his paintings by electric light at night. Okay, so here's the beginning of an interpretive explanation of this painting. Accident is a powerful painting that depicts L.S. Lowry's view of an industrial society. That's the beginning. Obviously written by a student older than the students we've been looking at. And here's a bit more of it, and I'll let you read it for yourself. So like the other explanatory texts, this one begins with a description stage. The relational process is used in introducing and providing a summary description of the piece being interpreted. The painting is described or contextualized in general terms. Accident is a powerful painting that depicts L.S. Lowry's view of an industrial society. So general terms. This is followed by an explanation stage, but importantly the explanation here is not going to be primarily causal but also interpretive. Consequently, not only do we get the use of material processes such as these, depicts and manipulates and so on, but also mental processes, or verbs like to project, to suggest, to depict, to symbolize, and adopt. Now, if you're not sure what a mental process is in systemic functional linguistic terms, refer to the course materials where you can find an explanation of all the different kinds of processes in the transitivity system. Using adopt, focusing on adopt in the last sentence, if you can see that purple word there. A mental process joins a sensor, that's us in this case, with something that is sensed, a more distant and objective view of things in this example. Now notice how causality is handled here. There is a causal relationship between the material processes or action verbs, manipulates, uses, dominate, uses, live, uses, and the mental processes or verbs, to project, to suggest, to depict, to symbolize, and adopt. Altogether, the piece explains how the artist has achieved particular effects. Okay, well obviously there's a lot more that could be said about the rhetorical resources of explanations, and this video is only designed as a mere introduction. The course materials will hopefully help you probe it a little deeper. Keep calm and write on.